Pakistan is said to be one of the largest contributors or producers of wheat in the world. India has got more than 50% of its population as youngsters. The consumption started increasing because of the demand factors in Pakistan. Good morning and welcome to the third session of Chapter 10, Comparative Development Experiences of India and its Neighbor. In the previous sessions, we were talking about China and we were talking about the various factors that made China a superpower. Now, in this session, we will be talking about the next neighbor, about Pakistan, and then we would also be talking about some of the macroeconomic factors that we are looking into in terms of development. So quickly moving forward, the agenda for today is Pakistan, of course, with no controversies, with no attachments. We are just going to look into that country as an individual country, as a neighbor, and we will try to understand the economic development of that country, followed by the demographic indicators. These demographic indicators are very, very important from the lesson standpoint because they would definitely ensure, they would definitely mean a lot to us in terms of understanding the comparative development across all the nations. So let's move forward. Now, Pakistan, moment when I tell the name of the country, it is quite obvious that we look at it as a rival. We look at that country with all sort of fear. We look at that country with all sort of hatredness. But let's remove all our bias out of the mind. Let's look at this country from an economic standpoint, not from an enmity standpoint. Let's try to understand what is Pakistan as a nation altogether. Now, when we look at the various economic policies that Pakistan has adopted, you will also notice that many similarities with India. No doubt about it. Because Pakistan and India had their independence almost on the same day, almost on the same year. So it is that the fact very, very clearly that Pakistan and India will definitely try to share their experiences across. Now, Pakistan follows mixed economy model and the coexistence of public and private. So no big surprises. Pakistan and India have the same economic model. They have a mixed economy, which means public and the private organizations will interact with each other and will try to move forward in the economy. They participate together. That's what is more important for us to learn. Now, in the last late 1950s and 60s, Pakistan introduced a variety of regulated policy framework, and that's very, very important for all of us to know here. Why? Because Pakistan, after their independence, also struggled a lot like India in terms of coming forward as an economic superpower. Pakistan faced this problem of what kind of policies, what should be our ideology, what should be our method of coming back. So Pakistan had a similar kind of thought process in the mind. How do we need to develop the nation? What are the sectors there where we need to start thinking a lot altogether? Now, the policy combined tariff protection for manufacturing of consumer goods altogether with direct import controls on the competing factors. So when we see this itself, the policy that Pakistan had adopted for the protection of manufacturing of consumer goods together with the direct import controls is on the competing factor, which means somewhere down the lane, Pakistan also initially did not try to understand the open economy or the competing economy factors altogether. They wanted to be a protected nation nation, trying to promote their country through their public enterprises and not allowing privatization to come up. And that was a big mistake. Rather than saying that word mistake itself, that was a big learning for them, because they also understood in the later years that unless and until the economy starts opening up to all the factors, we might not be able to go forward. Now, the introduction of the Green Revolution, the introduction to this Green Revolution factor that led to mechanization and increase in public investment in infrastructure, select areas, finally led to the production of food grains. Now, Pakistan, being a country of its own, it is also renowned, or it's known for its agriculture. Pakistan is said to be one of the largest contributors or producers of wheat in the world. Now, due to the Green Revolution that happened in Pakistan, again a similar comparative that of India, Pakistan also started improving in agriculture, point number one. And point number two is that Pakistan also started thinking about its improvement in infrastructure model altogether. That was one of the reasons where Pakistan could become a country which could start developing into a larger nation, into a more independent and democratic nation. Because Pakistan's ideology was that they also wanted to bring in changes to infrastructure, to the public sector and to the private sector altogether. So they started with agriculture, then they moved to infrastructure, and they slowly started getting on to the steps of development altogether. Now, moving forward, Pakistan as a nation changed the agrarian stature and they started dramatically moving forward. In 1970, nationalization of capital goods industries took place. So again, just like India, in the year 1972, just to bring in a comparison to you, India went ahead and nationalized all its banks, which means to say that all the banks were brought under the control of Government of India, and from there onwards, it was said that it is banks being undertaken, a Government of India undertaking altogether. Now that's a very, very good process at that point of time. Why? Because we felt that the jobs could be more secure. The government will take the responsibility of building the banks and taking it forward. So similar kind of activity happened in Pakistan also. They went on the nationalization of the capital goods. They started holding back the priority, the centrifugal force in terms of holding back all the goods, and they wanted to be more centralized in nature. They didn't want to just give it out things altogether, and they wanted to get the industries more focused from a government perspective. Now, Pakistan then shifted its policy orientation in late 1970s and 80s, where a major thrust was given to the area of denationalization and encouragement of the private sector altogether. So if you look into the philosophy of Pakistan, you will try to understand that the late 80s, like how India started emerging after the 90s, so similarly, the late 80s were the time when Pakistan started understanding there is no point in holding back the companies. There is no point in going back and telling to the world that, we are a centralized economy and the government will take responsibility for everything. We have to promote the private companies. We have to promote each and every industry as far as possible and make Pakistan a complete democratic country so that the development happens in every single sector. So this is where Pakistan changed its policy. Pakistan started thinking in its movement that we need to stop this nationalization. We need to open up the economy. We need to bring in the private sector altogether, and we have to start developing our nation altogether. So this is why I would definitely say that private sector was given priority, was given a thrust, and we started moving forward. Now, moving on. During this period, Pakistan also received a financial support from Western nations. Not to forget, US was an ally of Pakistan and still continues to be for many reasons. China is also an ally of Pakistan, so China also has given a lot of funds altogether. But during that time, I would see that the support majorly came from the Western nations like the United States altogether, and the remittances, the money, the foreign money that was coming from the immigrants to Middle East. Not to forget this point again, lot of Pakistanis emigrated to the Middle Eastern countries like Dubai, Oman, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, or probably every single Gulf countries that you can think about, because majority of the Pakistanis were working as unskilled and semi-skilled laborers in this country. So definitely Pakistan was getting a lot of foreign money from these countries, which was flowing inside in the form of remittances. So Pakistan was trying to get a lot of foreign currencies. They were trying to get an aid in the form of the migrants altogether. Now, this also helped the country in stimulating economic growth. Then the government also offered incentives to the private sector. So automatically the consumption started increasing because of the demand factors in Pakistan. Now there was an improvement in the lifestyle of people, and automatically you can also see that government started showing interest towards the private sector. Government wanted the private sector to come up, to open up, and then discuss how we could take this all forward. So this was becoming really interesting altogether. All this created a conducive climate for new investment. In 1988, reforms were initiated in this country. Brilliant piece of effort taken up by Pakistan during the year 1988. They started thinking in a different angle altogether. They wanted to develop this country. So in the year 1988, there was a lot of reforms that were introduced by the government in order to make the country even more stronger. Now, having studied the outline of developmental factors of both China and Pakistan, who are our neighbors, let us know and compare some of the developmental indicators of India, China, and Pakistan. Now, at the end of this lesson, when we will be completing it, our major objective here is to compare and contrast India, China, and Pakistan. So what we are now trying to do is that we have been just trying to study the different factors of the macroeconomic view of China, Pakistan, and India separately. But then, since we have been able to cover a bit of China and Pakistan, now we know what is the conditions that are being prevailing in both of this nation. Let's try to go forward and try to understand the macroeconomic indicators of both the countries. Now, if you look at the global population altogether, now we are talking about the demographic indicators. So if you look at the global population, 1 out of every 6 person, 1 out of every 6 person in this world, one is an Indian, another is a Chinese. So no surprises in this world. Out of every 6 people who live in this world, 1 is an Indian, 1 is a Chinese. The probability is very easy for us to pick up. So that means to say that 1/3 of the world population lives in India and China. And that is a very big population. That's a very big number for all of us to just know and digest. So India and China definitely are the world's largest populated country, which means there's a lot of human capital and resources that need to be explored, that need to be identified altogether. Now, we shall compare some of the demographic indicators of India, China, and Pakistan all together. So now we are going to do a comparative analysis and then try to understand. The population of Pakistan is very small and accounts roughly about 1/10 of China or India. Now this is something which I really want all of you to pay attention and understand. Why? Because Pakistan being a smaller country and the population is also small. That means to say that if India has got a population of 138 crores, Pakistan is roughly about 14 crore population. That means it's just about 1/10 the population of India. or China. Now, China has got a population of about 157 crore people, and they might probably land up somewhere near to 14.5 or 15 crore population. So look at the amount of people living in both of these countries. Definitely Pakistan has got a lower population, which means the human resource, the human capital formation is also lesser when compared to these nations. Though China is the largest nation among the three, its density is the lowest through geographically it occupies the largest area. Now, this is a very, very interesting fact. China is a large nation compared to India, compared to Pakistan, definitely. But then the density of population living per square kilometer, I'm going to talk about a little bit of geography here. The density of population living per square kilometer in China is definitely lesser when compared to India, which means to say that the population rush or the people rush in India, in Pakistan, is higher when compared to that of China. So China has got a population that is quite spread, that's quite, vast in nature altogether. Again, when we talk about those major cities in China like Beijing or Shanghai or Guangzhou and all those kind of places, yes, we would have population there, but then it is not that widely intense or spread like what you talk about India. Because when you walk through India, you will feel that the population factor is everywhere. Whether you go to Uttar Pradesh or you go to Madhya Pradesh or you come down to Andhra Pradesh, you will see population every single aspect as far as possible. But then that is not true in China because the density of population is definitely lesser altogether. Now, moving forward, scholars point out that the one-child norm that was being introduced in China late 1970s was one of the major reasons for the low population growth. Probably China understood that the population explosion can cause a major effect onto their economy. So Chinese brought in a norm saying very, very clearly that every couple should have only one child. You cannot afford going for the second child, and if you're going to do it, there are going to be certain penalties attached to it, which are financial, which are moral also. So the Chinese government restricted on the population by bringing in this one-child norm, which was really effective enough, and that was probably one of the reasons where they could have a control, where they could have a check on the population growth. Followed by which they also understood that this measure led to the decline in sex ratio, no doubt about it, the proportion of females per 1,000 males. Now, that's a side effect or an outcome, which I would say, because of the controlling of the population or controlling of the birth rate. But then that did have a toll on the China, because if you look at the male versus the female ratio in China, it has a quite vast difference altogether. Scholars will also say that the prevailing in all these countries is one of the reasons that we can talk about. In recent times, all the three countries are adopting various measures to improve the situation. Definitely, in India, in Pakistan, in China, somewhere down the lane, the stigma of a girl child, the stigma of talking again about the male versus the female still has been large and relevant altogether. But then over a period of time, after 2001 and 2002, we have been very, very particular in developing this ratio, in making this country as good as possible. So we are developing the scenario, we are developing the situation altogether. Now, moving forward, one-child norm and the resultant arrest in the growth of population is also to have the other implication. Now, they had certain other implications also. For instance, after a few decades in China, there will be more elderly people in proportion to young people. Now, this is the real problem of China, which I want you to understand from a demographic standpoint. India has got more than 50% of its population as youngsters. They're all people because India did not get into the norms of controlling population. India allowed people to give birth, which means to say that the youngster, the developing population of India, the Generation X and Generation Y are definitely higher and advanced when compared to China. But China will not be able to sustain this for a longer time period. Why? Because they will have largely a senior citizen population upcoming in the years. Similarly, this will force China to take steps to provide social security measures. So those population, that elderly population, are again going to throw back a thrust onto the government. They're going to pressurize the government because government has to take care of their life. So there's going to be a social security pressure that's going to come on the China. The government has to pay their pension, government has to pay their health care, government has to take care of their basic necessities. So in turn, it is going to be a burden back onto the government. So that is why I would always say that that measure had a backlash. Now, following which, the fertility rate is also low in China and very high in Pakistan. Now, this is one place where Pakistan is definitely taking an edge over India. The fertility rate of women in Pakistan is definitely higher when compared to that of India. Now, the other factor is that urbanization is high in both Pakistan and China, whereas India is having a 28% of its population living in urban areas. So we need to understand this factor that about 72% of the population in India still lives in the rural sector and tier 2 and tier 3 towns. But then when compared to that of Pakistan and China, where more than 50% of their population lives only in terms of their urban cities. So that is definitely going to have a demographic shift altogether. That's why some of the major cities like Islamabad or Karachi, or when you talk about Lahore, they are highly populated when compared to their rural sectors altogether. Now, moving forward, with this, we come to the conclusion of this session. I hope and believe that the session was interesting, informative and useful. In the next session, we will be talking about the demographic indicators and about some of the GDP factors altogether. Until then, stay tuned, stay blessed and stay enlightened forever. Thank you once again for joining me today.